Hello, good morning, everybody. Mr. Tinnel. Today is Thursday, May 28th. And this lesson is covering the 1990s to 2019. And starting out with good things. I got some mail yesterday. It's always fun, the good mail, not the bad mail with bills and everything. So I got a shirt I had ordered online. It was for a fundraiser for one of the local concert venues in my neighborhood, the neighborhood theater. But so it's a t-shirt supporting them. They're doing a fundraiser right now because they're shut down throughout all this, like many of the businesses across the country. And with things that are gradually starting to open up, neighborhood theater is not one of those places that could open up. So yeah, trying to help them out as much as I can. Help out small businesses, and especially the businesses that can't open right now. We want all the businesses that close down to be able to open back up once this is all done. So hopefully you guys are out there trying to support local businesses too. I hope you guys are doing well. Let's get through today. So today's lesson will be similar to what we did on Tuesday. Not super thorough, super in-depth, just kind of a brief cover of the two decades, the 1990s and the 2000s. 3 decades, 1990s, 2000s, and 2010s. All right. There are some short guided notes. Pretty easy if you follow along. They're very, very easy. All right, so the 1990s. Remembering the Simpsons, Bart Simpson, good times. It's crazy. They've been around forever. Simpsons have just always been around. So we ended last lesson with the election of George H.W. Bush. And during George H.W. Bush's presidency, we get involved in the Gulf War. So the Gulf War was a war between the United States and Iraq. We went to Iraq because they invaded their neighbor to the south, Kuwait. So they invaded an independent country. We went in and pushed Iraq out of Kuwait, and basically we pushed Iraq back into its borders. This was a very quick and successful war. We went in and took care of business. We protected Kuwait, and we kind of tamped back this, tyrant power of Iraq. So we pushed them back within their borders, and then we left it. Iraq maintained itself as a country. They were still always a little weird, always a little nutty. They were run by a dictator named Saddam Hussein. But for about 15 years after this, we left them alone. They kind of said crazy things here and there, but we generally, they were kind of the Middle Eastern version of North Korea, if you want a comparison of them. So we went in, took care of this pretty quickly. 1992, see the LA riots happen. LA riots were a big event out on the West Coast. A video footage of African-American man named Rodney King being beaten by the LAPD sparked riots for 5 days. 63 were killed. And as with all these video links, these are supplemental. A lot of really good stuff in there, but those are all supplemental video links. 1992, we also see Bill Clinton get elected. So George H.W. Bush, this guy, is elected for one term. He runs for election, he loses to Bill Clinton. 1995, the largest domestic terrorism act in United States history take place in the Oklahoma City bombing. The Oklahoma City bombing took place when Timothy McVeigh, who was an anti-government militant, blew up the federal building in Oklahoma City with explosives in a truck. Terrible moment, terrifying moment in American history. 1999, while Bill Clinton is president, he is impeached. So he was having an affair, and he lied about it under oath. So he wasn't impeached because of the affair necessarily. He was impeached because he lied about it when he was asked under oath. So he was charged with perjury and obstruction of justice. We've talked about this a lot. We talked about this a lot with Donald Trump. Bill Clinton was like Donald Trump. He was impeached, but he was not removed from office. Remember, there are two steps in that process. There's impeachment and removal. Like Bill Clinton, or like Donald Trump, Bill Clinton was impeached, but he was not removed. So the House found Bill Clinton guilty and impeached him. The Senate did not. You see that here. 55 said he was not guilty. 45 said he was guilty. We move into the 2000s. In the year 2000, George W. Bush was elected. There was a very tight election between him and Bill Clinton's vice president, Al Gore. So Bill Clinton's vice president, whose name is Al Gore, he ran for president against George W. Bush. It was neck and neck. It was a very, very, very close election. And it came down to the votes in Florida. This was a whole process. The link there does a great job of describing how intricate this process was. But basically, it came down to a few hundred votes to decide the Florida election. A lot of lawsuits. With most elections, we find out immediately. We find out the night of the election who won. We didn't find out until over a month later who won the 2000 election. It was a very nail-biting process. 2001, we see the 9/11 terrorism attacks. Terrorists from Al-Qaeda, led by Osama bin Laden, attacked the World Trade Center in in New York, and the Pentagon in Washington, D.C. They hijacked 4 planes. 2 were flown into the World Trade Centers. The one was flown into the Pentagon in Washington, D.C., and another that was on its way to D.C. Crashed in a field in Pennsylvania. Obviously, we've talked about 9/11 a lot. But because of this attack on the United States by Al-Qaeda, we invaded Afghanistan. Afghanistan was where Al-Qaeda had set up base. So we went into Afghanistan to root them out, to attack them, to go after the people who attacked us. It's kind of hard to argue the justification with this. It makes sense. They attack us, we attack them. We are still involved in Afghanistan. We are still in Afghanistan. We are still fighting in Afghanistan. This is the longest military engagement in American history. We've been in Afghanistan for a very, very long time. 2002, the Department of Homeland Security is created. You go through the airport and you go through all the screeners and everything. It kind of comes from this. 2003, we invade Iraq again. So back with George H.W. Bush in the Gulf War, we invaded Iraq because they had invaded Kuwait. Well, in 2003, Saddam Hussein, who was the president of Iraq, he has continually made crazy comments. He wanted to seem larger than he actually was. And he made it seem like the country had weapons of mass destruction. Supposed investigations had found that Iraq had weapons of mass destruction. So we said, well, there's no way that we can allow this country to have weapons of mass destruction, so we must go in and fix that. They didn't have weapons of mass destruction. They weren't involved in 9/11. Al-Qaeda was not in Iraq at this time. But still, we invade and we drive Saddam Hussein out of power. He is put on trial quickly and executed. So we removed him from power. And this is a debatable good thing, bad thing. Yes, we've removed a dictator from this country, but now what happens to the country? And Iraq is still today kind of up in the air because of that power vacuum that was left. Hurricane Katrina happens in 2005. Killed over 1,800 Americans, caused $128 billion in damage. And the main focus of this hit was New Orleans, Louisiana. The recovery efforts were questioned because of how long it was taking, and our federal emergency management didn't do as good of a job as it could have. But this was a devastating event. I always can remember the satellite image of Katrina before it hit New Orleans. It's terrifying, a terrifyingly large hurricane. Moving to 2008, there's a major financial crisis. It's the most serious economic downturn since the Great Depression. I think we might currently be in the most serious economic downturn since the Great Depression, but we'll wait and see. Hopefully not. Hopefully things will turn around. But so with this, the financial crisis in 2008, basically it had to do with housing. Too many housing loans were passed out across the country, and too many people took bets out on the housing crisis not happening. The banks were giving people loans for houses they couldn't afford. People were giving loans to people for many houses. People had four houses and they couldn't afford one. So this happens all across the country, leads to a massive recession, takes a long time to dig out of. And also in 2008, we see the election of President Obama. And now this last decade, it's terrorism, mass shootings, Boston bombing, and it was a major event. I'd left Boston at that time, but I still had a lot of friends that were in Boston. It's a scary day for sure. And I'd been to the marathon where the bombs blew up. I've stood in those places and watched the finish on days of the marathon. It was a very scary. It was a very scary moment in Boston. See, epidemic of school shootings since 2000. 233 have died in school shootings since 1999. A lot of natural disasters. Hurricane Superstorm Sandy took place up in New York, New Jersey area. Devastated the coastline up there. A lot of hurricanes, wildfires in California. Before and after is pretty interesting. Continuing to politics, Barack Obama runs for re-election, and he defeats Mitt Romney. 2016, first female candidate to be nominated by a major party is Hillary Clinton. She ran against Donald Trump. Obviously, Donald Trump won. Donald Trump and we cover this year, and you guys are aware, but Donald Trump was impeached, similar to Bill Clinton. He was impeached by the House, but it's a two-step process. So you have impeachment and removal. So Donald Trump was impeached, but he was not removed. So impeachment, but not removal. So we have civil rights and activism in this last decade. Occupy Wall Street began in 2001, and these were protests against income inequality. The top 1% and the 99%, that whole idea came out from the Occupy Wall Street protests. Black Lives Matter begins after Michael Brown was killed by police in, I believe it was Kansas. But regardless, Black Lives Matter still is obviously very involved. A lot of things happening, and a lot of things that are unfortunately happening today. And Obergefell versus Hodges. This was the court case that made it all the way up to the Supreme Court that said same-sex marriage was legal in all states. Talking about equal protection of all citizens, equal rights to all citizens. And that is all. So I hope you guys made it through that. We have one more lesson for the week tomorrow. It's going to be the last Story of Us episode. So sad. It is actually really good. I kid, but I love Story of Us. It's a fantastic series. And a few easy guided notes attached with that. So we will be back and check in on that tomorrow. Thanks, everybody. Take care. Bye.